Hello, and welcome back to another chapter of It Hurts to Hope by Inquilitory on AO3. Chapter 22, Everything Goes Sideways. Turns out, Jevin and Hypno know the shopkeeper they were trying to steal from, and had jokingly pocketed a couple items, all in good fun. Another customer spotted them and called the mods, causing a whole bunch of confusion when Jevin tried to clarify that they weren't actually stealing, actually they were, but they were just joking, and really, sir, I don't see the problem here. Stress relays all of this to Grian as they walk down the street, glued to her comm and leaving Grian to drag her out of the path of oncoming vehicles or pedestrians. Exuma says it all got figured out in the end, so curfew is still what it was. Stress finally reports with a sunny smile. That's a relief. Last time this happened, we all had to go home 3 hours early. I didn't even have time to buy any flower seeds. Last time? Grian echoes, but ultimately decides not to ask. He's probably better off not knowing. They're only around 2 hours into their trip, so Stress insists on giving Grian a tour of the best places on the hub world. They pick up Mumbo from his convention, and he willingly trails after them with a muttered, "And I was just about ready to head out anyways." Turns out Mumbo is a much better guy than Stress is, having been a hermit for much longer and going on many off-world excursions to the hub world, which Grian learns is called Ivamir. "Yeah, I kind of figured someone would have told ya," Stress laughs with a shrug, when Grian asks about the name. Ivamir's not too big, but it's fairly well known and has good stuff. There's other hub worlds we occasionally meander onto, but Iva is a waypoint we're all familiar with. They run into Cub at some point, who shows them a box of fireworks tucked under his arm, then winks and disappears again into the crowd. The trio collectively decides that if they don't hear explosions in the next half hour, it's not their problem. "Even if we do hear explosions, it's still not our problem," Mumbo clarifies, and they all agree. Grian is a bit slower to nod. He thinks that explosions should always be his problem, but ultimately, the others convince him that it would be a very bad idea to start trouble off-world. Especially since causing trouble could prompt the mods to take a closer look at Grian, which is something none of them want. He has gotten away so far with being an oddly colored avian, but if someone were to ask, he's not sure what his excuse would be. Speaking of which, as he trails after Stress and Mumbo, listening to Mumbo's commentary about the area, he realizes that the avian shopkeeper never asked him directly what his species was. He'd made a comment about False being a bird of prey and complimenting his wings color. Wait, what? But she never outright asked what he was. "Hey, how much do you know about avians?" Grian asked suddenly, interrupting whatever Mumbo had been saying and jogging to catch up to his friends' ridiculously long strides. Stress, despite being only a little taller than Grian herself, Stress, despite being only a little taller than Grian herself, seemed to keep up just fine. "Well, after we found out that you were one, I did as much research as I could," Mumbo says, thrown off track by the change in topics. "So I'd say I know quite a bit. Why do you ask?" "The person at the store didn't ask me what kind of avian I was. I'm wondering if there's some kind of taboo about asking an avian species." The trio falls silent as Mumbo ponders the question, turning down a smaller side street. Green's not even sure if any of them know where they're heading at this point, but he's sure it'll be fine. I remember reading something about that, I think, Mumbo says, and Green immediately perks up. Apparently, it's quite rare to be a purebred avian. Most of them nowadays have human or other hybrid blood mixed in, or they're just a mix of different avians. It's considered rude to ask another avian species because it's entirely possible that they don't even know what they are. Makes sense. Green thinks back to the shopkeeper. He's suddenly very grateful he didn't think to ask what kind of bird of prey she was. Thanks, Mumbo. Anytime, G. Mumbo sticks his hands in his pockets and grins over at his friend. Anyways, where shall we head next? Oh, I know this really good chocolate place. Stress interjects excitedly, then suddenly freezes. Eyes going wide. Wait, Void, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think about that. Green, can you eat chocolate? I mean, I've been eating enough of it lately to beat Etho and Beat-Up's combined sweet tooths, so I sure hope I can eat it, Green jokes, and knows that somewhere on the other side of the between void, Beat-Up feels the shift in the universe because someone insulted him. Why do you ask? Birds are allergic to chocolate, and so are most avians, Mumbo explains, catching on to the concern quicker than Green. I never even thought of that. I'm such a spoon. I can't believe... He trails off into mutterings as he grabs his comm and types out several frantic messages. Green and Stress watch with concern as he stares at the screen nervously, foot tapping on the sidewalk. The comm buzzes and Mumbo's expression dissolves into relief. Pearl says that even before the change, you always had a high tolerance for chocolate, Mumbo says, and puts his communicator away. And also that with all the changes you've undergone since then, it's probably that you've built up an immunity to it altogether. Well, that's good to know, Green says, wings fluffing up behind him. Where's this shop if you are Stress? Stress laughs and links her arms through Green and Mumbo's, dragging them away down the road at a concerningly energetic pace. There is not much they can do but keep up, and at one point Green completely separates from Stress's grip and lifts into the air, beating his wings to keep him at a steady pace above his friends. That's cheating, that is, Mumbo calls up at him with an affronted look, and Green bursts out laughing. The drink swishes in the crystal glass, catching the early noon sun and causing it to sparkle. It's almost memorizing, and Cleo finds herself thinking that she couldn't possibly capture such a beautiful detail in her armor stand statues. It's such a natural kind of beauty, impossible to immortalize in fake illusions. Gold nugget for your thoughts? I think my thoughts are worth more than that, Cleo replies indignantly, breaking her gaze away from the glass to instead locking it on her companion. Joe looks thoughtful for a moment, eyes glittering behind his glasses, before he reaches into his pocket and pulls out 5 shiny nuggets, placing them on the table. Cleo immediately scoops them up. Armor stands, she says, in that straightforward manner that they've both gotten used to over the years. It'd be impossible to make these glasses as they are. The etherealness of life can rarely be immortalized in stone, Joe muses, and they both look down at their glasses in thoughtful silence. They've been coming to this one bar for years now, and they still order the exact same thing they did when they first met. Joe's concerningly neon green sparkly drink, and Cleo's violently sunset orange one. "Fancy seeing you here," someone says, and Cleo looks up to see Wells walking up to their table. He gives them a friendly smile, but his eyes are distracted, and it's obvious there's something on his mind. "Howdy, Wells," Joe greets, raising his glass in salute. "What's troubling you, my friend?" "Ah, so Cleo isn't the only one who noticed." Wells frowns thoughtfully and takes the third chair at the small table. He leans forward and braces his forearms on top. His arm guards clink quietly as they tap against the surface. "I was coming over to say hello to you, but I noticed something strange on the other side of the street, and it drew my attention," Wells says quietly, and Cleo immediately cranes her neck to look over. Joe takes a sip and glances out at the street more subtly. She immediately spots Wells's problem. A group of people conferring on the other side of the street, clumped together in a way that seems unnatural and suspicious. She recognizes the way they stand. It's the tense, battle-ready stance of someone who doesn't trust the outside, and doesn't trust their group. And then she spots the barely visible insignia on their jackets, and she swears that her undead heart goes even more still. Fighting to stay calm, Cleo drains the rest of her drink and sets the glass on the table, using her other hand to tap out a message to Joe in their invented shorthand sign language Morse code. Joe's eyes spark, but he nods silently. "Stay here." "Wells, how do you feel about spying on some rascals who are probably up to no good?" Cleo says casually, and the knight grins and taps a fist against his chest plate in a quick salute. "I thought you'd never ask." Green, Stress, and Mumbo leave the chocolate shop with admittedly too much chocolate. But hey, Exuma was the one who put all that money on Green's comm, so really he's the one to blame. That's the story they're sticking to anyways. As they wander down the street with metaphorically lighter wallets and too many bags of sweets, Stress bumps into Mumbo's side as she bursts out laughing, and Mumbo reaches out to steady her. It ends up with Mumbo's arm over Stress's shoulders, Green on his other side with his wings stretched out like a shield along their backs. It's the familiarity of friends, the comfort of family, the inside jokes that send them all into rioting bursts of giggles that can't be stopped. And so as they continue on their way, none of them stop to look around or wonder at the prickling feeling along the back of their necks. They're completely unaware they're being followed. "So, are you going to explain why we're so concerned about these guys, or do we play 20 questions?" Wells asks as they trail after the group from a safe distance. And Cleo hums noncommittedly. It's not that she's shy about her past. She's actually been quite open about it ever since joining Hermitcraft. But apparently it hasn't come up much with Wells. "The symbol they wear is the mark of a long-running anarchy server," she finally explains, and she sees Wells's shoulders stiffen. Anarchy servers aren't a very popular conversation subject, and it's also possible that Wells has history with them, like many other players. "Is that the server you used to be on?" Wells asks, and Cleo blinks at him, then nods. She shouldn't be surprised, really. If a hermit is open about their past, it circulates fairly quickly through the server. "That's right," she replies. "Not many players had the ability to actually go off-world. Some of us didn't even believe they existed. Why would they stay if they had the opportunity of escape? It didn't make any sense, but here they are. I guess that's the universe's way of saying, "Ha! Wrong again." Wells doesn't say anything, and Cleo wonders if she's freaked him out. Most players avoid the topic of anarchy servers because they like to think ignorance is bliss, and ex-anarchists are just poorly adjusted players who will break your arm instead of shaking your hand. That's what you almost did to Joe, actually, Cleo's mind says, and she struggles not to laugh. The situation that concerned her escape was rather odd, and one that not many know, but she supposes that she did fit the image of a half-feral player tossed on into civilized life at that time. "It's quite brave of you," Wells finally remarks, and Cleo's pulled from her reminiscing and back to the present. I mean, with the backstory rule, no one's allowed to ask about it, but you choose to tell us. "I've come to terms with my past," Cleo says with a shrug. "It's a part of who I am, though a part I have left far behind. I'm not ashamed of where I came from, because it taught me how to survive. Getting out taught me how to live." "It still takes a lot of courage, and I commend you for that," Wells says, and he gives her a kind smile. "You have a knight's bravery, Cleo." Yeah, heard that one before," Cleo scoffs, trying to hide how pleased the compliment makes her. "So then tell me, Wells, knight, what would a warrior like you do in this instance?" She inclines her head towards the group they've been tailing for the past several minutes, and a gleam appears in Wells's sky-blue eyes. "Well, it's a knight's mission to stand up against injustice," he muses, running a hand along his sheathed sword. "If they try anything, I'll be obliged to step in." Cleo grins wolfishly, already feeling the adrenaline of a hunt start to rise. "And that's why I dragged you along instead of Joe." In Green's defense, trouble finds them. They're passing through a smaller alleyway, heading back towards the portal hub to rendezvous with Jevin, when they find their path inexplicably blocked by a small group of rather rough-looking players. They've got chopped hair pulled back in tight buns or ponytails, and their clothes look like they've seen better days. Green doesn't recognize the insignia on their jackets, but it glares at him in a way he doesn't like. Excuse us," Stress says indignantly. But Mumbo drags her back behind him and steps forward, spreading his hands in supplication. Green can't help but notice that he's gone deathly pale. "Listen, mates, I'm sure we can figure this out. We haven't got anything," he says, and only his faintly shaking hands betray his fear. "We're not looking for any trouble, but there's not much we can—" "Cut the bullshit!" one of the guys snaps, and pushes forward to come nose to nose with Mumbo. Not much shorter than the hermit, and a lot bulkier. "We've seen your kind around here before. You're practically roaming in dough. We're not asking for much, just one of your fancy comms, and you'll be on your way, yeah." Mumbo visibly deflates, in what might be both relief and disappointment. He's already reaching for his comm, and Stress looks like she wants to protest, but Mumbo's eyes level on her, and she's never seen him glare like that. She stays silent. Mumbo hands over his comm, and someone swipes it so quickly that Green barely even has time to blink. "That's all we got, unless you want some chocolate," Mumbo says, and it's almost odd how calm he is, or he's pretending to be anyways. A young woman steps forward and digs through the bags, pocketing a couple bars, but mostly leaving their things untouched. She's about to return to her group when her piercing brown eyes land on Grian hiding behind Stress and Mumbo. "Holy shit," she breathes. Before Grian could even protest, there's a hand with jagged nails digging into his arm, yanking him forward. "Look at this bird! I've never seen a shade like that!" "No!" Mumbo shouts, and pulls Grian back with surprising strength. "Listen, take the comms, whatever you want, but do not touch him." The strangers pause for a moment, as if surprised by his fury. And for a moment, Grian thinks that they'll be okay. He doesn't know why Mumbo looks like he's expecting to fight, but the way the woman grabbed his arm makes his skin crawl. He wants to get out of here as soon as possible. The woman laughs. It's harsh, humorless, and rakes down Grian's spine. "And how are you going to stop us?" she asks. And Mumbo opens his mouth, then closes it again. His hands are shaking harder now. "Wings like that could fetch a pretty penny in the right places. Listen, we won't even take the whole thing. Just a couple feathers, yeah? Some of those primaries, people playing blood for those." And Grian's mind goes blank, because he realizes, in one swift movement of paralyzing fear, that the woman wants to take his feathers, sell them for money. The fear crawls up his throat and comes out as a strangled croak, unlike any bird noise he's ever let out. Before anyone can move, before Mumbo can attempt to negotiate, or Grian can attempt to take flight and run for it, something else happens. Two somethings, in fact. Storming towards the group from behind, Grian and his friends with a deadly kind of intent. "Hands off our hermits!" Cleo shouts, and the hammer she's swinging from hand to hand looks big enough to smash skulls. Wells doesn't say anything, but his armor and shining sword speak for him. He's ready to fight. Mumbo whispers a quick prayer of thanks. His pale, shaking fingers latch onto the back of Grian's sweater and Stress's cardigan, dragging them both backwards and away from the strangers. Cleo and Wells pass them, and Cleo looks back over her shoulder to give them a wink. "Go find a mod to dump the situation on and run," she says, and Wells chuckles quietly. Then they both turn back towards the strangers and lunge. Mumbo doesn't waste a second. He grabs Grian and Stress and practically drags them out of the alleyway, bursting back onto the main street. "Alright, all mods are in green and sometimes hover a few inches off the ground," Mumbo explains swiftly, as he continues to drag Stress and Grian down the street at a pace they struggle to mimic. They have capes with Ivamir's symbol on the back. It's green and has vines and stuff. You'll see it. Tell me when you see it. Stress and Grian exchange a look behind Mumbo's back, but they obligingly start looking around the street, catching any dot of green they can spot. "Over there," Stress finally says, pointing to a young man in a green cape, leaning against a lamppost and reading a book. His feet hover a good 4 inches above the ground. "Excuse me," Mumbo calls out, picking up the pace even more and skidding to a stop in front of the mod. The man's head snaps up and he drops the book into his inventory. "How can I help?" he asks, eyes flickering over the disheveled trio. "A fight in the alleyway between Cog Street and Keithworth Avenue," Mumbo replies quickly. "A group of anarchists attempted to rob us. Our friend stepped in to help." The mod immediately dips his head and summons up a panel, tapping a button that makes the entire screen flash. Almost immediately, another green-cloaked figure pops out of a side street and dashes over, her blonde ponytail bouncing behind her. "We'll handle it. Thank you for alerting us," the first mod says, but Mumbo's hand latches onto his sleeve before he can take off. Our friends are the knights and the red-haired undead, he says. Please tell them to get to the portal hub as soon as possible. The mod nods and gives him an understanding smile, then zips off down the street with his companion at his side. They're joined by another figure, and all three disappear down a side street. Alright, Stress, can you please message X and tell him to meet us at the portal hub? Mumbo says, and starts down the street at a slightly calmer pace. Tell him it's code yellow. Stress nods and quickly pulls out her comm, but hesitates with her fingers on the keys. Her brown eyes flick over to the lanky hermit a couple times. Are you okay, love? She asks gently, and Mumbo lets out a shaky, slightly hysterical laugh. He runs a now violently trembling hand through his hair. To be honest, I'm around 5 minutes away from a panic attack, he admits. Green lets out a concerned trill and stretches out a wing to brush against Mumbo's shoulder. Usually there's someone more experienced to take charge in these situations. Just your luck that you got me. You were amazing, Stress reassures him, then swiftly types out a message and sends it. Is there something we can do about your comm? I installed a kill switch years ago. The comm is useless to them, and all of my data auto-saves to a drive back home. So all I need to do is transfer it onto a new comm. It'll be a pain to program again. But I'll manage. Stress nods, more to confirm that she heard him than to confirm that she understood, and pockets her own comm. She pulls a bar of chocolate out of her bag and breaks it into 3 pieces, offering one to Mumbo and then to Green. By the time they make it back to the portal hub, they've gone through several bars of chocolate, and Exuma is already waiting for them, pacing in a nervous circle and occasionally tripping over his own feet. Oh, thank the void, I was worried sick, he exclaims the minute he spots them, and races over to check them for injuries. What happened? Stress said code yellow. Anarchist group, Mumbo explains, and at this point he's barely keeping himself upright with his shaking legs. Wanted greet G's wings. It was going pretty sideways until Cleo and Wells showed up. We got mods to go over, but they're kind of far, and they were outnumbered at least 3-1. Oh, stars. I should have done something. What if they're hurt? Whatever thread of adrenaline that was keeping Mumbo together finally snaps, and he slowly curls in on himself as his explanation trails off into stammering, desperate mumbles. Stress immediately takes charge, guiding Mumbo over to a bench and sitting down with him. Green watches for long enough to be sure that his friend will be okay, or some semblance of okay, then turns to Exuma. The admin is also watching Mumbo, but his eyes snap to Green when he feels his gaze. I'm really sorry you had this happen to you on your first trip, G, Exuma says heavily, and he pulls up his comm to flick through messages while still talking to Green. Can you tell me what happened, please? Green relays the incident, from Mumbo handing over his comm all the way to alerting the mods about the problem. His voice shakes slightly when he describes the woman who wanted his feathers, and he can practically feel the fury radiating from his admin. It's sickening that someone would be willing to hurt another player for money, Exuma mutters when he's done, and his hands tighten around the comm. Green, I swear that I'll never let that happen. I promise. Green believes him. He really, really does. But he can't help but think that Exuma wasn't there to help them today. If it hadn't been for Cleo and Wells, what would have happened if Cleo and Wells hadn't showed up? Before he can spiral down that particular rabbit hole of paranoia, Exuma's head snaps up, and he lets out a strangled noise of both relief and concern. Coming into the portal hub are Cleo and Wells, and Green feels ready to cry with relief at seeing them alive and well. As they approach, he realizes that they're not doing as well as he had assumed. One of Cleo's eyes is already starting to bruise with a wicked purple color. Wells is nursing a split lip that's slowly dripping blood, but they're both littered with bruises and blood. Thankfully, most of it seems to be someone else's. On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? Exuma asks as they come into earshot, and Cleo shrugs, tossing her hammer from hand to hand. You mean how bad the other guys look, or how bad the mods hate us now? She asks, and purses her lips in deep thought. The other guys look like they went through a meat grinder. The mods didn't approve, but we explained the situation and they agreed that it was self-defense. We managed to convince them that we'd make it back all right. Wells adds, wincing and pulling a hand out of its glove so he can inspect his bleeding lip. Got a warning, but there wasn't much they could complain about since we were protecting ourselves and our friends. How's Mumbo doing? Cleo asks, glancing over to where Stress is quietly talking to the Redstoner, too far away to make out words. He did pretty good under pressure, but we all know that's just a front. He'll be okay, Exuma says, but his words have a mute feel to them, and the concern is thick in his voice. He fell apart a little, but Stress is an angel. I'm more concerned about the anarchists. Yours? You got it. Cleo scowls and tosses her hammer again. Nasty pieces of work. I wish I hit a little harder. If you had, we'd be dealing with murder charges instead, Exuma replies, then sighs and laces his fingers together, resting his head on against his hands. Cleo looks a little apologetic, and she reaches out to pat Exuma on the shoulder with a bruised hand. Sorry, X, but hey, we followed the rules. We found the mod to dump the situation on and ran. Aren't you proud? The proudest, Exuma replies, but his voice is muffled like he's either trying not to laugh or cry. It's hard to tell. Green hovers uncertainly for a moment, then finally reaches into his bag and pulls out more sweets. Chocolate? He asks. Wells and Cleo immediately brighten and split a bar between the two of them. Exuma declines any, so Green eats some for him. Eventually, Mumbo calms down enough to rejoin them, and while he's still a little shaky, he seems to be okay for the most part. He flushes a deep red when Exuma thanks him for taking charge, so Green takes that as a good sign. There's only an hour and a half left of the trip, so Exuma decides to cut it short and get everyone home before anything else happens. It's a sound decision, especially since Joe somehow manages to acquire possibly cursed crystals in the 40 minutes he's been away from Cleo. They hear explosions and realize it very much is their problem, since the source is Cub, and Impulse shows up with still smoldering hair and a box that rattles suspiciously. Remind me never to go into a Netherborn-owned shop again, he says, as Jevin tries to put his hair out, and they all decide not to ask. All in all, they manage to gather up all 11 hermits, or, well, 10 hermits and 1 not hermit. Pearl shows up at last, out of breath and apologetic for the delay. Got a little caught up, she explains with a wince, once she gets her breathing back to normal. I've spent so long world jumping, it's been a while since I've actually gone to see them. They all gather around the portal, and Exuma does one final head count to make sure they're all there. He laughs and shakes his head with a small laugh. He sighs and shakes his head with a small laugh. I hate family shopping trips, he says, and motions a giggling black-eyed Cleo through the portal. And that is the end of chapter 22.